What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Chris Talks. Today we're going to talk about jailbreaking. And contrary to popular belief, jailbreaking is not likely to void the warranty of your phone. Jailbreaking is quite simply put a way to gain root access or access to the root file system of an iOS device, whether that be an iPhone, an iPad, or even an Apple TV. You can jailbreak it pretty much. Now there are some exceptions. The major one being if you're not on the right iOS firmware version. Now only specific iOS versions can be jailbroken. So if you came to this video looking for info on how to jailbreak a device, I've put a really simple link in the description below. It takes to a website, and you can compare your iOS device version and see if you can jailbreak. Most of you probably won't be able to, but if you happen to know if you're on iOS 9.0.2 is the latest version that you can jailbreak, you can use Pangu's latest tool to jailbreak, and I will also put a description to that, or a link in the description as well to that. And of course, you can check your iOS version by going into Settings, General, About, and then scrolling down to the iOS version. It will be a number like 8.4 or 9.1, or most of you, I imagine, will probably be on 9.2.1, which is the latest version that Apple has released to the general public. But that's not really what I want to talk about in this video. What I really want to talk about in this video is just jailbreaking, as a whole. What is jailbreaking? What is its history? What is this whole jailbreaking craze that everyone seems to be talking about these days? And I've been a long time jailbreaker. The first iOS device that jailbroke was an iPod Touch, second generation. It wasn't even called iOS back then. It was called iPhone OS, and it was, I think, version 2.1.2, maybe 3.1.2. So quite old. And of course, jailbreaking is a lot different now than what it used to be, but it still is essentially the same procedure. Usually, you open up some sort of application that has some sort of payload that it injects into your phone to gain root access, and then from there it installs an application called Cydia, which is basically like the jailbreak app store. So from there you can install tweaks, you can install custom themes for icons, you can install just a whole ton of stuff that makes your phone really useful. And I've jailbroken every phone I've ever had. I've had an iPhone 4 or 5, and now a 6, and I can say that I've never had an iPhone that I didn't jailbreak if I could. So first off, what is jailbreaking? Jailbreaking, and I'm getting this right off Wikipedia, is the process of removing software restrictions imposed by iOS, Apple's operating system, on devices running it through use of software exploits. Devices include the iPhone, iPod Touch, iPad, second generation Apple TV, and the jailbreaking permits root access to the iOS file system and manager, allowing to download additional applications, extensions, and themes that are unavailable through the official Apple App Store. So what's the history of jailbreaking? Well, the first jailbreaks, they weren't really popular at the time. They involved a lot of knowledge of how to work with an iOS device without iTunes or some sort of GUI, which is a graphical user interface. Basically, a little window that you can click buttons on. But if you're not a power user, that's okay. Many jailbreaks that have been released, I would say since about 4.2.6, it looks like here, have actually been really easy to complete. The process it varies from some jailbreaks, especially the one called Jailbreak Me, which many of you may remember as the one you could actually jailbreak a phone by going into Safari, and it used a Safari glitch or an exploit to gain root access. And a lot of back when that jailbreak was around, you could go into like a Fred Meyer or a Best Buy and see iPads on display, and they would be jailbroken and had custom themes and stuff like that on them. But the last time one of those was released was iOS 4, and that was quite a while ago, and it probably won't happen again, considering Safari, the web browser built into iOS, is a lot more refined and secure now after years and years of security, beefing up security on Apple's part. So what do jailbreaks look like nowadays? Well, nowadays, I'm going to go with the last tools, ever since iOS 7 is good, or maybe iOS 6. The last tools have been evasion, Then Evasion released another tool for iOS 7, which was the first iOS 7, or like I guess a lot of you would think the new iOS, the one with the flat icons. The first iOS 7 jailbreak was Evasion 7. It was kind of a Christmas gift because it was released right on December 22nd of 2013. Then if you look at the jailbreaks since then, a lot of them, in fact, all of them, have been released by Chinese, or I guess just Asian teams. I'm not sure exactly if all of them are in China, but definitely they've been hosted in China, and actually at least one of them I know for sure was actually sponsored by a Chinese app store that paid the people that made the exploit something like $1 million to make this jailbreak, and then bundle their basically their unofficial jailbreak app store with the jailbreak package on Chinese computers, and it actually caused quite a bit of controversy at the time, but I won't get into that. Basically, you open up a application and some sort of window pops up saying connect your phone. Usually they warn you to turn off Find My iPhone because that can cause problems. Some say to turn off the passcode, although personally I've never had a problem with turning off either of those. And some even tell you to turn it into airplane mode for some reason that may help the exploit process. But essentially, it's just an application, and it just finds your phone, uses Apple's built-in iTunes drivers, and through whatever exploit it finds, it just jailbreaks your phone, and then usually it'll just install Cydia, although I believe it was Taiji, or maybe it was the last version of Pengu, did install a separate app kind of to help install Cydia and OpenSSH standalone. But almost all jailbreaks, essentially what they do is they install Cydia and give you root access, and that's basically all a jailbreak needs to do for a lot of the fun, or I guess more useful stuff. Kind of the reasons why you would jailbreak. That's all you really need to do a lot of those. But more important than what type of applications you can use for jailbreaking is what kind of jailbreak it is. Now there are actually two separate types of jailbreaks. There are actually a lot more, but I won't get into those. The two main types that people will be concerned with would be tethered and untethered jailbreaks. Now a tethered jailbreak is a jailbreak that will successfully inject code at boot up to gain root access, but upon reboot, it won't actually be able to reboot successfully because Apple's built-in security checking, to make sure no unsigned code is running, will actually stop the exploit from working, and the phone will sometimes just go into a boot loop where it will boot up. The boot up process will begin, and then something called the kernel panic will happen, and the whole phone will basically panic and just say something's not right, restart, and then when it restarts, something's still wrong, and then it will kind of go into some sort of like purgatory, I want to say, and you usually have to whenever you restart your phone, you'll have to be connected to a computer, and some sort of application will allow you to reboot your phone by re-injecting some sort of line of code that isn't permanent. But most jailbreaks, the ones that most people would install, I would say, the ones that I would recommend for someone to install, are called untethered jailbreaks. These have an exploit where they actually not only can gain root access one time, but they copy some files to the device that allow the unsigned code that they're running on the device to be either ignored or made to seem legit by the Apple security boot processes. Now, there's actually one more jailbreak kind of related to that called a semi-tethered jailbreak, and what this allows you to do is it won't actually allow you to boot up fully when you reboot. It will boot up into some sort of thing. It's not technically called safe mode, but it's kind of something along those lines. It'll boot up, but not all apps will be available to use. So Cydia and Cydia Substrate, which used to be called Mobile Substrate, basically the backboard to run a lot of tweaks and themes and stuff like that, won't be active when the phone boots up, and you won't be able to use. Usually it's like the phone, email, and texting, but one of those hasn't been released in a long time, so you probably don't need to know about it. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of jailbreaking. Pros of jailbreaking, like I've mentioned, you can get free apps if you want, although technically that is illegal, and I've only done it one or two times, quite honestly, because apps really aren't that expensive, and I've just paid for them. You can also get tweaks that improve functionality of the device. For example, one that I can't live without, and right now I'm actually running stock iOS, unfortunately, because I had to update due to an error that was my fault. It's called swipe selection, and I use swipe selection almost every day. Basically, it allows you to, and Apple did implement this feature, to be honest, in iOS 9 point, or I guess just iOS 9, but it's only available for iPads. It allows you to swipe along the keyboard left and right to move the cursor, and Apple's or iOS's fine cursor movement positioning where you have to hold and you get a little magnifying glass. I know Apple likes that feature, but quite honestly, I just get a headache whenever I have to use it, and it's just really annoying. So swipe selection is definitely one. And I know some people that only jailbreak for small tweaks, like swipe selection. Just because when you're running a jailbroken iOS, if someone has created a tweak for it, your device can do it. You aren't restricted by a lot of Apple's. It's called the walled garden a lot in jailbreaking terms. Apple has some sort of barrier that they decide what's acceptable and not acceptable to be on their phones. And if you have some app or some functionality that they don't approve of or haven't implemented yet, you simply can't have it on an iPhone. And so a lot of people go Android, although to be fair, Android phones are not totally free of restrictions. It's just a lot more open than iOS. And ironically, to jailbreak Android is called rooting is actually a lot more difficult more often than not than jailbreaking iOS because Android phones aren't always rootable. It could depend on what carrier you have, on what firmware version it came from the factory with, and a lot of the time it's actually a lot more of a pain to gain root access to an Android phone than it is to an iPhone. But essentially, it allows you to do a lot of things that you would never ever be able to do on a stock iOS device. So what are the cons of jailbreaking? With jailbreaking, there's no support if something goes wrong, other than the jailbreak Reddit or maybe forums that you might subscribe to. There really is no official Apple support for a jailbroken phone that is a problem that you're having with a phone that has some sort of extra functionality with the jailbreak that's going wrong. If something goes wrong, you basically have to figure it out. You can't really go on Apple's website and say my phone's doing something weird. So I would definitely think I would ask yourself before you decide to jailbreak an iOS device. Am I the sort of user that would be able to solve my own problems? Should something go wrong, or am I an advanced enough user to follow some detailed instructions that some guy gave me on how to fix my problem? And if the answer is no, I might not do it. But again, it's up to the individual, and that's what jailbreaking is really all about, is individual people having the power to decide what their phones can and cannot do. So jailbreaking now. How would you go about jailbreaking nowadays? We know about the past, we know about Jailbreak Me and Pengu. Well, the latest version that you can jailbreak is iOS 9.0.2, or actually iOS 9.0 to 9.0.2. And Apple isn't signing this firmware anymore, which means you can't actually restore a phone to this firmware in jailbreak because Apple has closed the window. Essentially, whenever you want to put a certain software on your phone using iTunes, Apple has to basically approve of that. So whenever you request to restore your phone on iTunes, iTunes actually has to communicate with Apple and say, "Hey, Apple, is it okay if I put this version of iOS on this device?" And if Apple says no, you can't do it. Apple usually only keeps signing windows available for older software for anywhere from a day even to a few days to sometimes even a few weeks if you're lucky. But the signing window for iOS 9.0 to 9.0.2 is really long gone. And the current version is iOS 9.2, and I think it's been a few months since the last jailbreak. So there really is no option unless you happen to be running an older version of iOS, because there's no way to downgrade as of yet without official permission from Apple, so to speak. But could we get a new jailbreak soon? That actually is the hot topic right now among the jailbreak community. A lot of people have been saying ever since 9.1 came out that they were just waiting for a new version of iOS to come out before they kind of use up the bullet, if you will. Jailbreaking is kind of like having a gun with one loaded bullet in it, and you're not sure whether the opponent is going to come out next time wearing a bulletproof vest or not, and you only get one shot. So when you use it, when jailbreak teams use an exploit, Apple will usually go into their program, figure out what they did, and close that exploit so it can't be used again. And in that sense, a lot of the jailbreaking, I guess, mindset for a long time among people that made jailbreak exploits, packages, was there's only going to be a limited number of exploits. Eventually, Apple's going to patch their software so you won't be able to jailbreak anymore. It'll just be so solid, rock tight. And that was kind of the attitude towards a lot of the or with a lot of the people that would make the jailbreaks for quite a long time, until a team came called Taiji, I think it was the first people that actually just changed the whole paradigm. Or it could have been Pangu. Let me double check. It was Pangu, and they kind of changed the paradigm here because a lot of the attitudes, a lot of heads rolled. Let me put it that way when Pangu first dropped, because it was iOS 7.1, and a lot of people thought that we weren't going to get another iOS jailbreak until iOS 8, which they actually jailbroke iOS 8.2 just later that same year. And the rapid, like 1-2 fire shots that they used up these exploits that had been, not only are they worth a lot of money if you sell it to some sort of organization or corporation or some sort of government, they're actually, pretty hard to polish and get to a state where you can actually use it to jailbreak a phone. And people kind of were really liking this new, it was a Chinese team that did it, and Taiji has done the same thing, more or less, the new jailbreak team, as far as releasing jailbreaks for newer iOS versions. I don't want to say recklessly, but definitely with a lot less consideration of should I use this exploit now. And a lot of people are excited about this because that means that iOS versions will be jailbroken faster and faster. I've never heard in the jailbreak community in all the years that I've been a member of it that we've hit a wall, that we haven't been able to find any more exploits. So I'm not sure if I totally agree with the new Chinese, I guess, or just Asian philosophy when it comes to iOS jailbreaking, that there will always be exploits and use them as soon as you get them. But I definitely appreciate the results that come with it, which is basically, generally, jailbreaks are more available and they're available faster. So do you want to hear when a jailbreak comes out, or if it comes out for a new iOS version? If you want to keep updated on all sorts of jailbreak news, specifically when the new jailbreak comes out, go and subscribe to my channel, and I will be putting out a video as soon as an iOS jailbreak version is released, and also a tutorial on how to do that. So that about wraps it up for today. If you liked the video, please give me a like. If you disliked it, leave a dislike, but of course tell me any constructive criticism you may have in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.